And you got a little demographic of it too, so people understand how you grew up and how you became the person you are today. Basically.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So you can start.
Hi everybody, I'm Lily McNair, the 8th president of Tuskegee University. I'm so thrilled to be part of this community and happy to get to know all of you and the ways in which we can support you. I was born in Fort Gordon, Georgia. My father was in the Army, and I was born there at Dwight Eisenhower Hospital. We only lived there for 3 months before my father was transferred to Arizona. We lived in Fort Huachuca, Arizona for 3 years. I still remember days when I played outside in the sun with that red clay, kind of like the red clay of Georgia, in the sun as a little kid. Then, after 3 years there, my father was transferred to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and that's where I grew up. When my father left the military, we lived in a little town right next to Fort Dix called Browns Mills, where many of the kids that I knew had fathers who were in the military, Fort Dix, the Army base, and McGuire Air Force Base. So I lived in New Jersey for many years. I think of that as my hometown, even though I say I'm a Georgia peach, because I was born in Georgia. I am the oldest of 4 children in my family. 4 years after me, my brother Cameron, he and I both went to Princeton University, but at different times. And then 4 years younger than Cameron is David. My brother David went to Rutgers University, and my sister Naomi, who's 2 years younger than David, went to Douglas College, which is part of Rutgers University. My sister and I are 10 years apart. She always jokes and says that when she was 8 years old, I left her and went to college. So she was very upset that I left her there with 2 older brothers. I think she's forgiven me a little bit by now. But we grew up in a very diverse community. As I said earlier, my mother is Japanese, my father's African American, and many of the kids in our neighborhood had mothers who were Japanese, Korean, Puerto Rican, from the Philippines, and so on, and fathers who were in the military, who traveled the world and met the loves of their life. So our high school had a great mixture of kids from parents who are from all over the world. And I think that's one of the things that has always helped me to be very open and very accepting of people from diverse backgrounds. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to go to Princeton University. And some people would say, how did this little African-American girl know anything about the Ivy League, know anything about Princeton? Well, this is how it happened. I was 8 years old, and I remember watching the news with my mother. And on the news, it was reported that the son or nephew of a Japanese high-ranking official graduated from Princeton University. So I said to my mother, that sounds pretty good. I think I'm going to go to Princeton. And my mother said, Lily, girls are not accepted at Princeton, because at that time, Princeton was all male. And I said, well, you know what? By the time it's time for me to go to high school, they'll be accepting girls, and I'm going to go to Princeton. And my mother said, but Lily, Princeton is very expensive. We don't have that kind of money. I said, that's okay. I'm going to get scholarships. I'm going to Princeton. And that's what happened. I had my eyes set on Princeton University, which was only about 40 miles north of where we grew up. But as a little kid, something in me said, well, if it was good enough for this Japanese high-ranking official's son, it's good enough for me. And I had my eyes set on that. I applied to Princeton, I applied to Rutgers, other schools in the Washington, D.C. area. I did not apply to any other Ivy League schools. It was not my intention to go to an Ivy League school. I wanted to go to Princeton. And I have to say, I was right. My parents were very pleased that I had scholarships to go to Princeton University. I loved being at Princeton. Being a student at Princeton, a young black woman, opened up my world. Yes, there were difficult times. Yes, there were times when I looked around and I'm the only black or woman in the classroom. Yes, there were times when I thought, you know, some of these students went to prep schools. I'd never heard of what a prep school or a boarding school was. Never heard of it in all my life. But I knew that the students who went to those schools had an advantage over me. But I never let that keep me from doing my best. So I made the best of Princeton. And during my times at Princeton, I was a resident assistant. I was an RA. So I got to know a lot of students from all walks of life. And I have to say that my core group of friends, the majority of whom were African American students, they were my supports. We were each other's support. We helped each other to do our best and exceed the expectations at Princeton University. So I was very pleased when it was time for me to graduate and go to graduate school. I applied to graduate schools in clinical psychology, and I was accepted to the schools and made my choice regarding what's the best school where I can do my best, where I can use my knowledge of psychology here at Princeton University. And I'm happy to say that my years at Stony Brook University, where I met my husband, who is a graduate of Morehouse College, those years kind of extended my process of becoming a young African American woman and a scholar. Being married to a Morehouse alum, I knew quite well the opportunities and advantages of going to school in the Atlanta University Center, Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, Morris Brown. Now, when I applied for the position of at Spelman, I was a faculty member at University of Georgia. I had not thought that I would leave University of Georgia. But when I got a call saying, there's a position here, we think you might want to consider it, I said, sure, I will consider it. You never, turn down an opportunity. So I went on the interview at Spelman and I fell in love. I'd never been a student at an HBCU. I understood what President Beverly Daniel Tatum said when she was at Spelman, she thought, this place was built for me. Where can you go as an African American student, woman student, and say, this place was made for me? And that's exactly how I felt. I went on my interview there. I met many people and students at Spelman, and I was enthralled with the idea of coming there as Associate Provost of Research, where my job possibilities were to increase research capacity for faculty and students. We all know that Spelman is seen as a very top HBCU, and it's also a top HBCU for graduating women who go on to get doctorates in the STEM field. So that was very much the focus of what I was doing, increasing opportunities for students who wanted to go into the STEM fields and for students who wanted to go into other areas of research, whether it be in economics or law or English or history. But it was all about how can we develop opportunities so that students will have the great capacity to compete with other students who go to major research universities. So that's what was wonderful about Spelman, a small community that really provided excellent opportunities for research. Oh, yes, it did. I was so proud of all of our students when they would do presentations, when they would travel overseas. So, for example, I was one of the chaperones for our students who competed in a robotic competition in Japan. So I had the great opportunity of being there with the only African American and woman team from around the world. That was quite stellar. So I really did think that the opportunities that I was bringing for our students really reflected my intense focus on what can we do to support the growth, the professional growth of African American students. But it was also at Spelman when I realized that I really liked doing the work of being a college administrator. up to this point, I'd been a faculty member. And I wrote articles, I edited books, I taught, I did research with students, I had grant opportunities for my students, and I never thought of helping to keep a college advancing. But when I was at Spelman, I began to see how important it is to be a college administrator and begin to create the opportunities and pave the pathways for a school to become even greater. When I was at Spelman College, there were opportunities for me to advance in my own career. So as I said, I was Associate Provost of Research, and at one time I was also Divisional Coordinator of Science and Mathematics. So basically, I was the administrator to whom all the science and mathematics departments reported to. I really enjoyed that opportunity and began to think about what's in the future for me in terms of my career path. Now, I was Associate Provost, and I was nominated for a leadership experience to get me to the point to become a Vice President for Academic Affairs. And that was really a chance for me to learn about how to be a college administrator, to learn about how does one as a vice president support the president and help to move the college forward. I knew from this program that I needed to take the next step and apply for jobs as a provost, as a vice president. And I was able to do that. I applied for the position at Wagner College in Staten Island, New York, and I became the provost there. I was there for 7 years, and I think when I consider my purpose at Wagner was really all about creating opportunities for faculty and students and really diversifying the role of faculty and bringing in faculty from underrepresented groups. Now, when I was at Wagner, I had a wonderful president who basically said to me, okay, next step is a presidency. So I knew that I had to keep my eyes open for the kind of opportunity, college or university, where I might see myself as a leader. I remember very clearly the night that I completed my application for Tuskegee. I remember sitting in the living room with my computer saying to my husband, you know, I think maybe I could do this. Look at some of the similarities in terms of Tuskegee's curriculum, the strength of Tuskegee in the STEM fields, engineering, and look at what I did at Spelman. Tuskegee's a much larger, about 1,200 students more than Spelman, but I think I can wrap my arms around this. And that's exactly what happened. I realized that my experiences at Spelman and Wagner prepared me to come to Tuskegee, to become part of the community, to say to everybody, as I said before, excellence in every way. We have an opportunity to reimagine Tuskegee and help Tuskegee to flourish and thrive so that all of our students can flourish and thrive as well.